Hello and welcome to In Depth, where the big story today is the story that has been making the headlines since the morning. Three of our brave hearts, a colonel and two jawans, have lost their life in the LAC face-off between India. Santosh Babu, a native of Suryapet district of Telangana, is one of them. The other two are also on your screen at the moment, Havaldar Palani and Sepoy Oza. These are the three brave young men who've lost their lives in that face-off with China along the line of actual control. These are the three images that we are getting you of our one officer, two jawans who gave the ultimate sacrifice today on the line of actual control in a face-off with China. More details are being awaited, but it is these images that will be in our prayers today, in our thoughts today. The three army men who were killed in that face-off. Remember, this is the first face-off of its kind since 1975 with China at the border. So that is the tragic news that we are getting you today, and we'll have much more, of course, on that in depth today. There are still conflicting reports about how exactly the face-off happened, but sources telling India today there was no firing and the three army men were killed in that face-off with the Chinese along the LAC in eastern Ladakh. Remember, all of this takes place after decades of relative quiet, peace and tranquility along the line of actual control with China. That line is now hot again in a violent escalation to the ongoing border face-off. Indian and Chinese troops had a clash on Monday night, which led to the death of the three army soldiers, including an army colonel. Let's go across to Gaurav Sawant for the very latest. Gaurav, those pictures now released by the army, give us a sense of how this is being perceived at the defense headquarters. We are told there have been a series of meetings, including with the Prime Minister. Give us a sense of how India is perceiving what has happened along the LAC.
Rajdeep, there is an intense sense of disappointment and shock at what perhaps can be described at best as Chinese treachery. Rajdeep, till late yesterday, the conversation that was happening between the commanders on the Indian and the Chinese side, at both at the level of the brigades and the battalions, was de-escalation from Patrol Point 14, which is where the current standoff was, in Galwan Valley. Patrol Point 14, 15, then 17 Alpha, and then subsequently move towards Pengong So. So this was supposed to be step one. Late in the evening, a patrol of the Bihar regiment, the battalion that was stationed there, that was sent out to verify because the Chinese had said they would be withdrawing. When this patrol went there to verify, Rajdeep, that patrol was at the Chinese team was actually withdrawing. Indian side was to move till our perception or till the line of actual control. That is where an altercation happened. The Chinese troops came back, attacked our patrol, and this was only a verification patrol. From what sources tell India Today, Rajdeep, then a second Chinese patrol, which was perhaps waiting there, they came and they were armed with clubs and sticks with the barbed wires and stones, and they attacked. And all of this was happening at a ledge. This is quite at a high altitude area anyways, 14,000 feet plus altitude. This is where, there were fisticuffs, there was an engagement, soldiers on both sides fell. Reinforcement came in from the Indian side, and once blood was spilt, reinforcement came from the Indian side, reinforcement came from the Chinese side, and for several hours, Rajdeep, it just kept building up. Ultimately, it resulted in these fatalities. We unfortunately lost the commanding officer, Colonel Babu, and the two soldiers. Some soldiers were not immediately accounted for. 11 were injured, some critically. We are told of casualties even on the other side, Rajdeep.
Gaurav, we'll of course come back to you with more details in the subsequent bulletins. Remember, the Chinese media has also reported casualties on their side. Beijing, however, has blamed India for the incident, saying Indian soldiers attacked their personnel at the line of actual control. What really could have happened? Let's take a look.
In a massive escalation of border tension, an Indian army officer and 2 soldiers were killed in action during a brutally violent confrontation with Chinese troops in the sensitive Galwan Valley in eastern Ladakh on Monday night. The army said there were casualties on the Chinese side as well, but the extent of it was not immediately clear. The Chinese media confirmed casualties, but held back specific numbers and details. While no shots were fired from either side, the combat deaths come after a gap of 45 years and were the result of a violent clash using stones and metal clubs. A large number of Indian and Chinese troops are presently engaged in an eyeball-to-eyeball situation in the Galwan Valley and other areas of eastern Ladakh for the last 5 weeks. Both India and China are engaged in military and diplomatic level talks, but this latest violent skirmish had catapulted the LAC standoff to a dangerous level. While India has maintained that talks will continue, the Defence Minister last week asserted that we won't compromise with national pride in any way.
हमारी सरकार किसी को अंधेरे में नहीं रखेगी, न भारत की संसद को अंधेरे में रखेगी, न किसी को अंधेरे में रखेगी। उचित समय पर हम इसका खुलासा करेंगे, हम ये बताएंगे। लेकिन इतनी बात मैं विश्वास के साथ कह सकता हूं कि हम अपने राष्ट्रीय स्वाभिमान, नेशनल प्राइड से किसी भी सूरत में समझौता नहीं करेंगे। ये हम आपको भरोसा दिलाते हैं, हम आपको विश्वास दिलाते हैं।
But Chinese Foreign Ministry blamed the Indian troops for the recent skirmish. They should not cross the borderline. They should not stir up trouble. And they should not take any unilateral actions that would complicate the situation on the border. China and India have agreed to continue to solve the border issue through dialogue and consultation. Clearly the stakes are high and the situation at the LAC remains grim as troop build-up by both sides continue. Defence Minister met the top defence brass and briefed the PM of the situation. Big question is, what would be India's next move as the border standoff continues? With Shiv Arur, Gaurav Sawant and Abhishek Bhalla. Bureau Report, India Today.
Amidst these escalating tensions, the question is just why have matters reached a head? I spoke to the former National Security Advisor Shiv Shankar Menon just over the weekend. Listen in what he had to say on China's intentions.
Reports that China has actually expanded the definition of her LAC and is now claiming that the whole Galwan Valley is within her LAC. If those are true, then we actually have a real problem. Because then the Chinese are actually showing a willingness to break the agreements that we have signed in the past since 1993 onwards. And that would be a whole new pattern of Chinese behavior from which we would have to naturally draw our own conclusions, change our own behavior, and see how we deal with it. But this is why I am concerned.
I know you're saying there are no confirmations of these reports of the Chinese, exactly the nature of their military adventurism. These are entirely based on sources, but there is a report now in the British newspaper, The Telegraph, which actually goes to the extent of saying that the Chinese have annexed 60 square kilometers of Indian territory, primarily in the Galwan Valley. You have international papers reporting about it, and there's been no strong denial from the Indian side. Has the time come, therefore, for New Delhi to state its position categorically so that these reports of China annexing Indian land are put to rest?
You know, there are limits on what the government can say, because the government is presently in a process of negotiation. with the Chinese in order to restore the status quo as it was before all this started. And in that process, they cannot negotiate through the media. But they do need, since this has dragged on for so long, and since the uncertainty is so high, I think they do need to communicate with their own people, and I think with the international community and with China as well, indicating what their red lines are, what is the minimum. For me, the minimum would be a restoration of the status quo and a vacation of any new fortifications, etc., that they might have built on our side of the line and any permanent presence on our side.
So it's that disputable line of actual control that has been the source of much of the flare-ups that have taken place between India and China. But this is not the first time that the two countries are at loggerheads. Not long back, it was in June 2017, that a large construction party of the Chinese army with road construction equipment tried to build a road in southern Doklam region at the tri-junction of India, Bhutan, China. Memories of that standoff are still fresh. It had taken 24 rounds of diplomatic talks spread over 6 weeks to diffuse the tension. Let's just take a look at how things panned out in the middle of 2017.
Between Sikkim in India and Bhutan, there is a strip of Chinese land shaped like a tongue, which juts in south, creating a tri-junction where the borders of the three countries meet. A strategic sliver of desolate land that has much military worth more than anything else. In mid-2017, the 82 square kilometer piece of land at the border tri-junction between India, China and Bhutan became the focal point of a military standoff between India and China. It had all started on 16th of June 2017 when a road construction party of the Chinese army entered the disputed area, claimed by both Bhutan and China, and attempted to build a road near India's border. It was Bhutan that raised the alarm and India that sent the troops to get the Chinese out. China refused to vacate the territory and sent in its own troops. For 73 days, the soldiers of two of the biggest standing armies in the world stood eye to eye and sometimes tussled freehand to make a point over Doklam and domination. Finally, on August 28th, both India and China pulled back their troops and Doklam was desolate and at peace once again.
Let's take a break at this point. When we return, we'll tell you more of the stories of the two Indo-China wars and of course of China's ambitious Belt Road project that India has a problem with and is one of the reasons for the current flare-up. Welcome back to this in-depth special where we're looking at the backstory of the Sino-Indian face-off along the line of actual control. The Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, is Beijing's grand plan to commercially link up more than half the world's population under China's stewardship. A massive network of land and sea routes spanning 3 continents, touching over 60% of the world's population. The BRI also passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It's a series of highways, railways and energy projects on the disputed land between India and Pakistan that are in the pipeline as part of what China hopes will be its plan of global domination. The project is ambitious and Chinese President Xi Jinping's brainchild, part of his desire for an expansionist China. India is one of the countries that is standing in the way of China's geopolitical intentions. Take a look.
This will be a great undertaking benefiting the people of all countries along the route.
Xi Jinping's visit to Kazakhstan in September 2013 was the first time that the Chinese president mooted the idea of an economic corridor. Within a month, In October 2013, Xi was in Indonesia kickstarting his South Asia tour, where he spoke of a new maritime cooperation along the Silk Route. Since 2013, China has forged ties with over 60 countries worldwide in consolidating its geopolitical strategy to dominate the world. Chinese President Xi Jinping's brainchild, the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, comprises a massive network of land and sea routes spanning 3 continents and touching over 60% of the world's population. Previously called the One Belt, One Road, the BRI has 2 distinct components. The overland economic belt that has 6 trade corridors and a maritime Silk Route with a string of seaports spreading from the South China Sea right till Africa. While China claims over 60 countries are on board, China's neighbor and another Asian giant, India, stands opposed to Beijing's move to project itself as a superpower.
हम ऐसे नए कनेक्टिविटी प्रोजेक्ट का स्वागत करते हैं जो समावेशी, सस्टेनेबल और पारदर्शी हो और जो देशों की संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता का सम्मान करे.
India's biggest concern lies in the BRI's flagship project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. In April 2017, a port in the small fishing town of Gwadar on the southwestern coast of Pakistan's Balochistan was leased to China for 40 years. Gwadar is where the economic belt will meet the maritime Silk Road of the BRI. A $62 billion project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor aims to link Kashgar in the landlocked western Chinese region of Xinjiang to the Arabian Sea 3,000 kilometers away via the Gwadar seaport. India's main objection is that the CPEC passes through Indian territory illegally occupied by Pakistan. The Kashgar-Gwadar corridor passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. A series of highways, railways and energy projects passing through the disputed land between India and Pakistan are in the pipeline. In September 2018, New Delhi raised the issue of CPEC violating India's territorial integrity at the 39th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Now, every incident of Sino-Indian hostility brings back memories in a way for many of India's war with China in 1962, considered the biggest reference point in a sense of India-China military standoffs. The outcome of that war served to cast in stone the notion of Chinese superiority. But things are changing, and before we look at that, let's take a look at how things panned out in 1962.
In 1947, when the British left India, there was no clear line that demarcated the newly independent country and the territory of Xinjiang and Tibet across the Himalayas. In the official 1950 India map, Kashmir's boundary east of the Karakoram Pass was shown as boundary undefined. A sort of ambiguity prevailed over large tracts of land, and nothing would have mattered had China remained politically weak and militarily ambivalent towards its southern extremities. But in 1949, the Communist Party under Mao Zedong seized power in Peking, and in October 1950, 80,000 soldiers of the PLA marched into Tibet and declared it to be a part of China. In 1956, China built a road cutting through Ladakh's Aksai Chin area, connecting Xinjiang and Tibet, making the Aksai Chin area far more accessible to the People's Liberation Army than to its Indian counterpart. In the eastern sector, in the then Northeastern Frontier Agency, or NEFA, Indian troops began patrolling heights that China saw as a violation of the disputed McMahon Line. On October 20th, 1962, 3 regiments of Chinese troops mounted a blistering attack along the southern bank of the Namkachu River, and suddenly India was at war with China. A military confrontation that was fought both in the east and the west, in Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh. This was a war dictated and controlled by Chinese aggression. After 4 days of crushing battle, on October 24th, the Chinese halted. Peking sent an ultimatum to New Delhi, setting conditions for the withdrawal of its forces and hostilities. On November 14th, India told China there would be no deal. Hours later, the war resumed, both in Nefa and in Ladakh. On 18th November, the Chinese overran Bomdila, the southernmost strategic point that they were to occupy. The road to the plains lay open before them when they declared a unilateral ceasefire along the entire border and announced withdrawal of its troops to 20 kilometers behind the line of actual control, LAC. The war was over, and India, having been militarily humbled, it acted as a wake-up call to build up muscle.
That's it on this India Today special. We leave you with the images of our brave 3 soldiers who lost their lives on the border. Our prayers and condolences with their families. Bye for now.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.